understandably, Silicon Valley VCs sort of grown when you have a business that's focused around kids. And so why is this demographic hard? Like, why did VC sort of shy away from it? What, is it truly hard? Are there pitfalls, or are there tricks of the trade that you can navigate these waters? Anybody can answer. I'll buy a vowel.
Yeah, I've heard plenty of groaning from Silicon Valley VCs. It is hard. One of the challenges is certainly in our business, and we focus on original IP, even though we do the Mr. Potato Head app with Hasbro, is the duality of customers. You have to get parents to buy into the app, literally and figuratively, and you have to have children who enjoy the app. And that's a challenge. Parents oftentimes will say education is paramount in the app, but oftentimes purely educational apps aren't very delightful. So there's
and sometimes I think Angry Birds is educational, right?
Exactly.
Well,
I've certainly heard plenty of parents even say, Mr. Potato Head, our app is educational because of fine motor skills.
Of course.
And there's some truth to that, but truly, curriculum-based education and making it delightful is a challenge. We've managed to do a good job of that ourselves, but it takes a lot of testing, both with kids and with parents.
Mm-hmm.
I would also add that a lot of investors are looking at how different app publishers generally are using data to optimize ultimately revenue and as well as retention. And if you think about how a lot of other app publishers outside the kids category monetize, one is through advertising, which requires a lot of collection and analysis of data about the usage of the users. And then secondarily, with the increasing trends in freemium apps, optimizing towards in-app purchases. And there's a little bit of tension there in terms of that use of that data when we're looking at potentially probably not exposing children to advertising, so then relying on in-app purchases. That tension around what data can you collect, how can you use it, and what are the risks there if those children are using these devices without their parents' permission, or if there aren't proper gates in place. And so I think that is also a concern with investors.
Actually, Vicki, I have a question. You've done extensive research on families, and can you share a little bit more on what's on top of minds of parents when it comes to devices and children's media? What have you seen? What have you learned in all your product research?
Right. Before I answer that, I was just going to say quickly, I've not dealt with VC, but I would guess that another reason that the children's market can be a little tougher is that the developmental appropriateness is so limited. The stages of development occur so rapidly. So if you have a product that's educational for a 2 to 3 year old, it's not going to be applicable to a 4 to 5 year old, and same with an 8 to 9 year old. And so you're targeting such a narrow market, and kids age out of an app pretty quickly. So I think that's part of the challenge for those who want to make something truly educational. A thing that you see in a lot of educational content for kids is that kids who are too young for the educational message in the content are attracted to the entertainment part of the content. And so, for example, this is something that we've seen with television shows like even Sesame Street, where kids love the stories and the characters, but the 2-year-olds are loving it and wanting to watch it, but they're actually too young to pick up on the educational messages there. And that's something that I'm on the board of advisors for PBS Kids, and it's something that they struggle with a lot, is the aging down of the media to where the content's not appropriate. What parents are thinking. I've done a bunch of big national studies of parents over the last 2 years. And I'm finding it a little hard to say exactly what parents are thinking. And I think that we're in a really big transition point. I think that there's a chance for parents to tip one direction or the other. What I find is, one of the last surveys I did, we asked parents, have all of these new devices, smartphones, tablets, iPod touches, etc., have they made parenting easier? Mm-hmm. Which I expected that they would have. And interestingly, we found parents did not think they had made parenting easier. So on that very big measure, I think there's a chance for this industry to do a better job. We found 40% of parents who said that you know, it at least somewhat made parenting easier, versus 60% who said it hadn't. And the intensity of feeling on the two sides was pretty marked too, more strong than the 40-60 would lead you to believe. It was only 3% of parents who said they strongly felt that these devices had made their parenting job easier, and 35% who strongly felt they had not.
Interesting.
Yeah, we test all of our apps, and again, our focus is, unlike some of the other panelists, our focus is exclusively on mobile. So we have tested thousands of kids, and along with those thousands of kids, we also test and interview parents. What parents will say they want in an app is educational. Number one answer, over 90%, education is most important. The use case for mobile apps is very different, though. The reality is when you talk about use case as opposed to intent or result, over 90% will say the use case is I want my kid to be quiet. I want my kid to be quiet in a restaurant, in the backseat of a car.
The digital pacifier.
Yes, exactly. So that's also part of the duality of inside a parent's mind only. Before you even get to whether the kid is finding the app either educational or entertaining, or hopefully both, that is a challenge. So, ultimately, if it's not serving its purpose as an entertainment device that is appeasing a child and keeping him or her quiet, it doesn't matter if it's educational.
So what I'm hearing is it's extremely complex in navigating both age groups that continue to change and have different needs, as well as appealing to the parents, et cetera. Some believe that it's helpful, others don't. So it is tricky. No wonder they're growing.
I agree with that, and unfortunately, I agree with that. And I think that, you have to at least have the veneer of educational content, and parents are delighted when they see that their kids actually are learning from something. So if their kid can count, and to a degree that the parent did not know they could count, which happens, or recognize a letter, or say a word in Spanish, et cetera, they get very delighted. And I think the number one thing, though, is that besides occupying the child independently of the parent, is to make sure it's not doing anything, teaching them anything bad. As long as they know it's not making my child sassy, or it's not violent, or it's
Drugs.
not, showing parents in a bad light, like some of the content that they might see on some TV shows sometimes.
Like Breaking Bad.
I'm just thinking of some of the Cartoon Network shows that I hear about from parents in focus groups and that type of thing.
We don't have Cartoon Network on our panel, so you can say that. Excellent. So we'd be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit about COPA and some of the hurdles there. I know about 2 years ago, I think, a year and a half to 2 years ago, COPA came down and sort of cracked down on app developers and really, kind of flexed their muscles. And I think people complied, and now it seems like it's kind of some big studios, I won't really name anyone in particular, are sort of launching stuff and sort of trying to get under the radar screen of COPA. Have you seen that? What issues are still existing today with COPA, or what things should people be aware of and thinking about when addressing and or complying with COPA? Or should you not even bother? Should you realize that they're not really being that strict, and so for now, go ahead and if anything, they'll make an example of perhaps the biggest publishers, kind of like Martha Stewart's situation. Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
Well, I'll jump in here. On COPA issues, I keep an arm's length distance at Sony. So we generally market directly to parents now. Anything that seems, remotely going towards children, we shy away from. Mm-hmm. So working with partners and on their marketing plans, I tend to find that the larger publishers are willing to, risk it a little more, and some of the, more nimble, smaller developers are a little scared. And I think that gap needs to be closed. I think we need, better guidance from the government, or at least better attorneys on all sides coming up with clear guidelines. Mm-hmm. And I should probably mention the Smurfs issue. So we've had some COPA issues in the past with, kids buying too many Smurf berries. And,
Sure. In-app purchases.
In-app purchases,
Mm-hmm.
we were the poster child for that. But, we came around, and the Smurfs Village is still doing as good as ever, and a lot of parents are playing.
So when you say you got in trouble, what happened and what did you do?
Trouble is probably the wrong word to use. Just notoriety probably came about. So, Apple, it was really more of an Apple issue, just to, make sure that the kids couldn't purchase unlimited amounts of, berries at one time.
Sure, I think it really is an Apple issue and a Google issue, as they're actually refunding, I think, multi-millions of dollars back to parents for in-app purchases that weren't really technically approved. Excellent. So, see, maybe 2 years ago as well, I negotiated a deal with Sony Pictures and their Hotel Transylvania animation, and put it together with Play First Hotel Dash, and so it became Hotel Transylvania Dash. It did really well, jumped up to the top of the charts within the first 48 hours or so. So I'd really like to turn that to the panel and say, if you are a developer and trying to break through in the kids and family space, do you need a big brand in order to hit the top of the charts, or can you have original IP? What do you guys think?
Dean and I are going to say yes, you need a big brand. You need to license a big brand.
You need a license, of course.
Preferably
Yeah.
from DreamWorks or Sony. You don't. I
Do you
don't
have business cards? Because people would like to talk to you
Exactly.
afterwards.
I don't think you do need it. Obviously, it helps you if you have a game that's called Little Red Puppet and you have a game called Elmo. One is going to get a lot more downloads than the other, even if it's the exact same game. It really helps you with the acquisition. I think Vicky brought up a point about kids aren't. When we say kids, like this is the most segmented demographic of them all. Mm-hmm. Are we talking about under 18, under 13, under 10, under 8, under 5? The difference between preschool and a 15-year-old is massive. So I think for us, I think one of our dividing lines is on one side, if you have the preschool sort of stuff, you do want to adhere a little bit more to the COPPA compliance sort of stuff, maybe less focus on advertising, and as a result, you tend to do less in terms of product in that space because it is harder to monetize under the current models. For us, and I'm sure Smurfs falls in the same category, we see a lot of our IP that is family friendly, but DreamWorks, we call it 4 quadrants: young, old, male, female. Mm-hmm. And kids don't stay in the boundaries of where they're supposed to go. If something is entertaining to them, they will find it. We try to create products that has something for the whole family, not just for one segment in the kids group. Mm-hmm. So if you're playing a Kung Fu Panda game, it's something that 40-year-old man should be able to enjoy as much as a 6-year-old.
So you guys
Plenty of 40-year-old men play Smurfs Village.
Yeah.
It's true. I'm not even joking.
Excellent. So what you're saying is, if you do license a brand from you guys, you really, because it comes at a hefty price, right, if someone wants to do that, but also the studios really help with the marketing power, not only just the brand awareness, because people know the equity of a particular, Smurfs is a big, right, title, but also with some marketing push, you help with those efforts.
We don't always, generally when somebody licenses a property, they are responsible for the development and the marketing, but what they're getting is a huge halo effect. And not all licensed IP is equal, even of ours. If I'm going to license you Shrek, it makes a difference if a movie is coming out. If a movie's coming out and we're spending $100 million to tell people that it's out there, we don't even need to spend money towards the game on our side. Just when you talk to Apple and Google, them knowing that a movie's coming out, your chances of being featured are a lot higher. I mean, it first of all starts, you need a great game. If you have a crappy game with a brand on it, it's not going to do anything. Mm-hmm. Which I think goes back to your original question, do you need the IP? Mm-hmm. You need a great product more than anything. IP helps though.
Sure.
But you have to hit that date. It's a lot of pressure with the movie. A little different with the TV show.
Mm-hmm.
But Bex, do you have anything to add to that? Because clearly Originator Kids has done a great job of coming up with original content and not paying any licensing fees to big IP owners.
Yeah, I totally agree with the point about great products. That's what we focus on. And it is interesting sort of at a macro level that when there's the kind of device disruption that we're seeing with tablets and mobile, mm-hmm. It's an interesting time, and I've seen it time and time again. I'm old enough to have seen it time and time again. When you have device disruption, it's an opportunity to create new IP that is associated with these new devices in a whole new use case. So, the endless apps, there's endless alphabet, numbers, and reader, have 500,000 daily active users.
Those are all your titles, all
Yeah.
Originator Kids titles.
5 million monthly active users, which I'd hold against almost any kid's property out there, including in television.
All organically, right?
All organically. We haven't spent a dime on marketing, no co-promotion, nothing.
But how did you get those organic downloads?
Just great products. And again, catching the attention of Apple with MS Alphabet and them saying this is just a magic product. It was runner-up to App of the Year last year. All of our other products have been editor's choice. So Apple promotion certainly helps.
So you got lucky, or did you go hustle their door?
Well, no, you really can't. I mean, it's a bit of a black box, as it should be, I think. Again, what you can put in the slot, if you will, at Infinity Loop is a great product,
Sure.
and see if there's response, calling attention when you can. But once you get the reputation for building great products, then they start asking for more, which is a nice.
And you've also done, so if, let's say, if you didn't get Apple or Google love, as we like to say, you actually did some deals with schools, or kind of hustled a little bit at
Yeah.
schools as well to create awareness?
Well, we didn't hustle schools. I mean, it was, the bureaucracy of the Department of Ed in this country is pretty uninspiring, I guess, is probably the best way to put it. And it's very, it's just hard to penetrate. So in our case, what happened was releasing these apps that, again, have this interesting balance of entertainment and education. Teachers were starting to recognize and understand that some of these kids who were playing our apps were the best spellers, had broader vocabulary, could count to 100 at the age of 2, whatever it might be. And so teachers started recognizing it, and so now we're getting sidedoored into schools. And rather than any kind of direct marketing or sales effort into schools, we just simply release school editions of some of our apps. We have one out already that's doing very well. The second school edition, in this case with Endless Numbers, is coming out next week.
Okay.
And again, that's targeted specifically to teachers and to school districts.
So just to be real quick, you have a SKU that you launch in the App Store, and then you actually take that and you create like a product extension, if you will, that is a special edition for schools.
Correct. And being a small team, we really respond to what the users out there are saying.
Yep.